Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 156th episode of Real Hawk Talk. This is Brian Nemhauser, Ad Hoc Blogger on Twitter. I've got the whole crew here trying to figure out how to pronounce players' names before we go live. We're professional. We want to do right by these players, and we've added some tough ones this year. There are some challenging names for Evan, they could be Joe Smith, and it would be incredibly difficult. But for the rest of us, there are some challenges this year. Let's bring in the crew. First, Dayna O'Gorman at Dayna OG on Twitter. Dayna, it's so good to see you. How are you?
I am good. It has been a minute since I have been on the show, but yeah, it's been really good. And it's Robert Kimdichi. He out of his mouth. That's how you say it, in case you were curious. Because, yeah. But yes, I've been well. It's been a busy summer. And so it's nice that we can get back into the rhythm of football again here pretty soon.
You've been on like podcast after podcast. Like, how are you holding up? Is it like a marathon?
It is a little bit. Yeah, I did 2 on Tuesday, 1 yesterday, 1 today, all hour long. I had a great time. I went on a Buffalo Bills podcast, but talked about the NFC West. So that was really fun. And had to explain why Josh Allen is not as good as Russell Wilson. He might be someday, but not right now. That was a fun conversation, but had a great time with those guys. But yeah, you can just tell that everyone's kind of gearing up for the season. Like it's time to start kind of digging into those rosters and half the people that you don't know on the roster because they won't be there here in a few weeks. But it's been good. What was
the Bills podcast? Do they have any perspective on the Seahawks, or are they just talking about the Bills?
No, So the host is Jay Spence, and it's called Code of Conduct is what he does it. He does it for their SB Nation channel, and he has a ton of respect for Seattle and their kind of winning culture, and how we talked a lot about how the Bills didn't have that for years. That everyone always came in and talked a good game, but they couldn't bring it over, and how impressed he is that Seattle has always been able to kind of keep that winning, maybe not a Super Bowl, but that constant winning culture. So we talked about that, and lots of love for the defense, which was kind of interesting. But they were pretty proud, and that's what he said. They were very proud they beat Seattle last year, and so they kind of hold that as a badge of honor, even though they were clear deep into the playoffs. I mean, that was wonderful, but it's just it was just really interesting, and it was fun to get their perspective. And the funny thing is, they wanted an outsider's perspective on the Bills, and so it was kind of nice to get that back and forth. But
sorry, I lost my train of thought. Good to know. I have to say, I'm not sure Josh Allen wasn't better than Russell Wilson last year. Josh Allen was really good last year.
And he looked great.
And Russell Wilson was the best player in football for half the season and then wasn't for half the season. So,
if you go from one season, and that's what we talked about. One season, he looked fantastic. It's can he continue that? Can he repeat it? Because Russell's done it for 10 years. He would like that same consistency. So, it was a great conversation. We had a good time.
Russell's never been the MVP runner-up, though.
Oh, God, you had to say it. You're such an ass. There is no such thing as an MVP runner-up. There is no. It's not a title. You don't put it on a resume. It's not Miss America, where if one cannot continue their duties. And you just said that to drive me crazy.
But he did finish second place in the voting, though, right?
Second place is first loser. I'm just saying, right? It's not a thing. It's not a thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having some votes for Russell at some point. More than 0 would be a start. I thought we were a cinch for that last year, and did not turn out that way. That person trolling someone else on the show, that voice should be no surprise. It comes from none other than Nathan Ernst at Nathan E11 on Twitter. And Nathan got my memo today. He decided to dress up just like me. I thought it was very sweet, and I love you, dude. So it's great. Nice to see you.
When I grow up, I want to be Hawk Blogger.
So. There is nobody that says that, but it can be all yours. The title will be vacant, and you're happy to take it over. Like it's like Cable Thanos, like when he just like bequeathed that that handle. He's just like, whoever wants it, it's yours. And has anyone seen if anyone's taken that handle?
I haven't looked. Mm-mm.
I mean, because it's probably worth a little something. Like you could probably tarnish Josh's brand without I'm like a little surprised Evan hasn't taken it, because I could think of some epic trolling that could be done by taking Josh's old handle. Nathan, I can see him furiously looking to see if it's available so he can take it and start screwing with people. The last but certainly not least member of our quartet tonight is Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. How is it going north of the border, Jeff?
Good, man. It's nice to have on. I wasn't supposed to be on tonight, so this was a nice last minute thing. I was actually doing a lot of research on the Seahawks today, so I was talking to a couple national guys that were at camp and just going back and forth with them. So I got some good tidbits to share tonight. Some people have talked to the front office, and there's certain players that we might not have talked about that the team is really excited about. We're seeing sort of the same reports as everyone else, so some of the names will be pretty familiar, but there actually is a lot of positive stuff going on with the Seahawks right now. There's some really interesting players, and there's a lot more. To me, this roster is much more interesting than it's been in the last couple of years, where they've been a little top heavy. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on with this team right now.
Interesting. Well,
you guys, $10. Nathan went to go change his shirt. You know he did.
Oh yeah. If there's anyone he doesn't want to look like, it's Brian.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty clear. Yeah, I understand. He's not alone in having that desire to not look like me. But let's start with this, guys and gals. It's been a bit of a story through camp so far that day after day, there are moments of the defense getting the better of the offense. And usually early on in the camp, that's kind of the way things are in a lot of cases. And you don't think much about it, especially when you had the LOB years and those kinds of things. For those that are listening and not watching, Nathan did just come back with a different shirt because there's certain things you cannot abide. And yeah,
not actually why I left, but I had a shirt sitting next to me and I couldn't pass it up. So
yeah, well, we all are disappointed we didn't get to see you change shirt. That would have been high quality TV. So as I was saying, the defense has been making plays against the offense, and again today, a number of turnovers. Early on, there were some false starts. We've heard about Quandre Diggs getting a number of picks. We've heard about Kella Witherspoon getting tipped passes. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy today who picked off 2 passes. He's an unrestricted free agent. I want to say Ashari Crosswell. Is that the right name? I think it is. He's from Arizona State. He's a undrafted rookie. Actually a guy that I kind of liked heading into camp. It says in my notes, so I'm not just late to it. But anyway, is there any reason to be concerned or excited about this? Like, how do you feel when you hear that the defense day after day seems to be getting the better of the offense? Dayna, let's start with you.
Well, I kind of look at it like this. I would prefer that be the case, especially because we have a new offensive coordinator. So it makes sense that if they're trying to change things up, they're trying to make things different, if they're trying to make them faster, because that's all we keep hearing, right? Oh, it's fast, that would be the side struggling to implement that versus the defense who has the exact same defense. And they would be struggling. That would be very worrisome to me. And after the start they had last year, we don't want to see a repeat of that, but it was such a good ending that they're continuing that. It's very encouraging to me. We have to remember Jamal Adams isn't even on the field yet. I mean, they have some players that were out. Bobby was out for 2 days. And so it's good. I think that these, we're starting to show maybe a little bit of depth on the defensive side. And I'm not concerned about the offense just because it is a whole new system. The fumbles bother me. I will say that.
So Nathan, let's do a percentage here. Like, I don't even know if this even really works. Like, how much out of 100%, like how much are you excited about the implications for the defense versus how much of that are you nervous about the implications for the offense? Like where do you fall more on that spectrum?
I'm just 50-50 on this, I guess. I'm not really leaning either way right now.
That's great content, and people are going to love hearing that.
Well, so I think everything that Dayna just said is right. I mean, the defense is mostly the same, no new change in scheme. The offense is going through, we have Waldron now, so all that's different. And there's also new pieces with guys like Gerald Everett and stuff like that. And I think, there's a thing in basketball where rookies who like rookie point guards and stuff that make a lot of turnovers, that's actually a good sign that correlates well with like future success. And the short answer for why on that is that they're trying things, right? That they're aggressive, they're pushing it, they're thinking, and trying to do creative things. And I think with Russell, I mean, who knows? We'll see. But it's very likely that he's out there, new system, and just trying things, right? You've got new toys and new, so I'm not at any point concerned yet, but if we're here a couple weeks from now and it's like this, or in the preseason games they start to look like ass, then it ramps up pretty quick.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm gonna adjust the question a little bit for you. Feel free to backtrack, but at what point would you start to be either excited about what the implications are for the defense or worried about the implications for the offense?
Probably after about 2 preseason games. For me, I think Nathan and Dayna hit this right on the head. One of the things I know a lot of the film people on Twitter were talking about this. One of the things, Seattle sort of switched what they did schematically defensively in the second half last year. They started playing what's called these bear fronts, which was a different scheme change. It also aligned with that bad run of quarterbacks. So it was hard to tell how much progress the defense made, but they sort of changed a big part of their alignments defensively. So they were going in with the same sort of scheme that they jumped off the table. And I think their personnel defensively is much better this year. I think they have way more bodies. Apparently Daryl Taylor's looked pretty good in camp. That was one of the things I heard. Alden Smith is a guy who's really flashed. Michaela Weatherspoon's a guy who's really flashing. I think he might be a better player than Shaquille Griffin, as crazy as that sounds. So I think defensively it's a pretty smooth transition. They have a lot of bodies there, a lot of returning players. And other than like Jared and Reed, not a lot of change. So to them, they sort of hit the ground running. Offensively, like what Nathan said, it was perfect. They should be trying things, and this isn't a situation where it would be likely they do hit the ground running because their offensive line is in and out every day. They don't have a left tackle right now. Their center's been banged up. They're trying stuff. So I think if they did hit the ground running, it would have been really surprising. I think there's a pretty big adjustment schematically. I think there's a pretty big adjustment for the kind of plays they want to run. I read today and I heard today that Russell's been holding the ball a little too long today. That was an issue for him, or fumbled snaps. So this is good. They have to get this stuff out of the way. This is how you learn. This is how you practice. A lot of these schemes that teams take on, like when Kyle Shanahan got to places with Matt Ryan, it took almost a full year for people to fully master these offenses. So it's going to take time, and they're going to have to learn. And this is how the growing pains go. So I think it's still early, but if this is like this for the next 3 weeks, it gets a little worrisome.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, honestly, I don't think I'd even be concerned and excited about the defense or concerned about the offense after 2 preseason games. I think my concern would start showing up after 3 or 4 regular season games from the offensive standpoint. Obviously, you don't want to see him struggle at all, but it took Brian Schottenheimer when he was here a while to figure out what are the throws that Russell likes to make and what are the throws that he doesn't. And it'll take Russell some time to figure out how to make the plays that, if Waldron really is, I mean, in the time that I have been at camp, there were definitely intermediate throws that were just not there, at least the last year in the Seahawks offense. And so Russell certainly is adjusting to that. He does have new targets in someone like Gerald Everett. And the bigger thing to me is like get Dwayne Brown into camp instead of having like Stone Forsythe as your left tackle. And so It'll be a while before I'm concerned about the offense. I think there's a lot of reason to feel pretty good about, like, foundationally, Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, the tight ends, the running backs, the offensive line. There's enough talent there that and plays that they know how to do that I'm not going to be too worried for a little while. Defensively, I think it is good news, honestly, because the places that we're hearing these plays get made are secondary and specifically the cornerback position. And what's one of the positions that we've had the biggest question mark about? It's been corner play. And the fact that regularly it is Kella Witherspoon who's making these tips and that Quandre Diggs is regularly getting interceptions, I think that's goodness. Like, I think that this team will benefit from having a defense that is not the worst historically, in NFL history, as it was for the first half of the year. I think some people actually have forgotten how bad the defense was to start last year. It was really, really, really bad. And the fact that Ken Norton's still here, we haven't talked about, like, the fact that if you had said that Brian Schottenheimer, after 8 games, Brian Schottenheimer would be fired and, like, fire and brimstone, people like pitchforks to get him out, and Ken Norton is still here, I think we would have all said, what in the hell are you talking about? Right?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Don't you guys remember? We were all pounding the table. It's time to let Ken Norton go. Pete Carroll holds on to people for sentimentality. Like, do you remember all of that? And man, he flipped that around on us quick as nothing.
I still would have liked Ken Norton to be fired. I'll be totally honest. I just forgive it because they did make quite a turnaround in the second half of the year. I'll put it out there. I don't put it on yes, they played easier teams and easier quarterbacks. I saw a defense that was markedly better, regardless of who they were playing, because they played some bad teams in the first half and they still were horrible. So I do think the defense took a big step forward. Is there a name, Jeff, that has piqued your interest so far in camp? And maybe it's one of the people that you've heard about, or maybe it's just a report that you've seen that's kind of got your attention.
Yeah, I'll say Robert Mdiche. I thought he was a guy, Dayna said it right before. He was a guy who I thought was maybe a flash in the pan. Maybe I heard not only is he probably going to make the team, he might start. And to me, that threw me off. I thought LJ Collier might start at that 5 big end position. I heard he's very much in the running to start. He's been that good in camp. He's taken on the defense that much. So you might have a front with him, Al Woods, and Dunlap, and Poona Ford. And if he can play, that's a pretty interesting front with all those edge guys they have between Hyder and Smith, and Mayowa, and Taylor. That's a pretty interesting front that really has been the biggest weakness of this team in the last 2 years. So he's a guy I didn't know I thought he was a bubble player, but he is that far ahead right now where he's practicing ahead of Collier in camp.
Well, he's certainly a better athlete. I mean, and he's got to only be like either the same age, maybe a year older, like, right? Like, Nathan, I'm sure you're looking it up right now. Mdiche was a first round pick, as people know.
I'm so mad. You're not wrong. He is a year older than LJ Collier. How is that
3 years before
possible?
Wow.
Just absurd.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not rooting against LJ Collier. Like, any players that want to step up and be great, awesome. But Mdiche came in with an amazing athletic pedigree and basically was, the book on him was that he's got a 2-bit, brain in terms of or attitude, maybe in terms of how he came out about being a professional, and was out of the league for a full year. And you guys all know if you can get someone that has that kind of athletic profile to actually, like, turn it on to actually know how to be a professional and have a work ethic, and the Seahawks get to be the beneficiary, that would be huge. Nathan, you always help check me on like my hyperbole. There was a tweet the other day and it had which of these defensive lines is the best in the NFL, and it was like 8 different teams. And I looked and I was like, "Where's the Seahawks? The Seahawks aren't on that list." Do the Seahawks have a top 10 defensive line? Or do they have the potential to have a top 10 defensive line in the NFL?
I mean, I think the thing that's hard about saying that they'll be that good is they don't have anyone that's near a top 10 player on the line, right? But I mean, Darrell Taylor is a complete wild card, and then you have a ton of depth, and you have someone like Alton Robinson who maybe is going to take a big step forward, right? So if they end up there, I don't think it's going to be surprising. It's a little hard to say that they will be, though, just with, especially their best player being, older too. Like there's nothing saying that Dunlap's going to play as well as he did last year. So I don't know. It very possible, but not like a lock.
Yeah. I mean, Dayna. Okay. Dayna. If you want to make some guesses, you get the first. Like, what do you think some of the top 8 choices were for best defensive line in the NFL? They only listed 8 teams.
Washington.
Yep, that's one.
Let's see. I would assume. I mean, the Rams.
Yep, that's 2.
Let's see.
Where's your favorite defensive end playing these days, Dayna?
My favorite defensive end?
Yeah.
Oh no, who's my favorite defensive end?
The Browns was Clowney now. They added Clowney to the mix. They got to be a top 10, right?
Why? Why do you do these things to me, Nathan? Why do you say crap like that? I was literally thinking, what's my favorite?
Not wrong though, right? That's up there. They're up there, right?
They were not among the list.
No, really?
They were not.
No, because we're just talking about the lines, not the whole defense, right?
Defensive line, just the defensive line.
Yeah,
Nathan, Jeff, you guys want to throw some out there?
Let me think for a second. Colts, maybe?
I mean, Tampa Bay would be there.
Tampa Bay is one of them.
It's got to be up there.
Tampa Bay.
Are the Packers up there with the Smith brothers? No.
Go for 2, Ernst. Come on, dude. I'll give
Niners,
you
right? Niners? Gotta be the Niners.
Niners are not in there.
Not for the line. It's hard to differentiate the line from the rest of the defense. I mean, if you're thinking of just good defenses, but let me see who else would be up there. The Colts?
You said an NFC or AFC North team. There is an AFC North team, but it wasn't the Browns.
Steelers.
Mm-hmm. They didn't throw the Chiefs in there, did they?
They did not.
Okay, good.
Are going to play this year?
There's one that's going to be really hard to get because the team's not going to be very good this year. They lost their quarterback.
The Colts?
The Saints.
Oh, they're going to suck this year.
Yeah. So the others, I'll end your suffering. So the Eagles and the Bears and the Jets.
Bears.
Well, Khalil Mack, and then you have Brandon Graham over on the Eagles. Yeah, I can.
So, like, here's the thing. I'm leaning in on the defensive line for the Seahawks. I 100% agree that they do not have a blue chip. Like, they don't have a single blue chip player. I'm not even sure that they have someone who clearly has blue chip upside. We don't know what we have in Darrell Taylor yet. Maybe Poona Ford continues to he took a pretty big jump last year. Maybe he gets there, but I think that's stretching things.
Yeah, I don't think.
But what I love about this group is wave after wave after wave. There's no drop off. The difference between Aldon Smith and Carlos Dunlap, I'm not sure that there's a huge difference. And much to Derek's chagrin, I don't know that Benson Mayo is a huge drop off from the other guys on this list. And then you've got, Alton Robinson. I'm expecting that we are going to have a show where we are furious that Alton Robinson can't get any snaps this year. He's young, he's talented, he was great last year. Why isn't he getting snaps? But yet there's going to be other guys that are being really productive. I think Kerry Hyder, guy after guy, I think there's really good talent here. What are you guys smiling about? You're anti-Kerry Hyder?
I'm having
I like
flashbacks
Kerry
to
Hyder.
last year's podcast. Now tell me about how it's going to be the best secondary in the league, and we'll be
I'm not
right
going-
back
No,
to 2020.
no.
I'm not going that far, but look, the reason I think that this is different, the secondary last year, we were talking about the starters essentially. We were talking about Shaquille Griffin, Quentin, right? What's his last name? Dunbar.
Very forgetful.
Diggs and Adams. Like those were the like frontline people, but we didn't necessarily. And then Marquise Blair. Like we didn't know. There wasn't a lot of depth that we were pointing to. And when things went bad, which they did, there was nobody to really step in for Quentin Dunbar and play good corner on the outside. Here, like you could be wrong 3 different times at the end spot or lose 3 different people, knock on wood, and still potentially put out a quality player in that role. So like I love this is what I was hoping they would have done last year. I almost think like it's going to be hard for them to not have a good defensive line this year. Like I think people would have to have below career years, like below their average career years for that defensive line to be bad. Yeah.
I was going to say something. No, I was going to say one thing I talked a lot about on the other podcast I was on this week is constantly over and over when you talk about Seattle defense, obviously the Legion of Boom is brought up constantly over and over and over again. And I think as Seattle fans, that was the expectation for a long, long time. What we always have to remind ourselves and remind other people is that was a historic, legendary lightning in a bottle defense. That's not going to happen again. And so if that's the expectation people are looking for, they're always going to be disappointed. But if you just look at these guys, especially on the line, they equal more than the sum of their, it's not the same. We're not saying, the way they go together and the depth that they have. Depth was one of the most important things to the whole entire defense during those Super Bowl runs. And so being able to move people out. So I think that they're getting back there, but we will never be to that level. And people just need to get over that. They just need to get over it and just realize that this defense was really bad for the last couple of years, and that they are starting to finally click and put those pieces back together.
That's a really good point. And Nathan, I mean, when it went wrong last year, it went really wrong, right? Like the defensive line, they really put all their chips in the Jadeveon Clowney bucket. Then they didn't get him, and then they were like scrounging around, and then Bruce Irvin got hurt in the second game, and like so the defense did not have a good pass rush at all to begin the year, and then the corners were awful. So the secondary, the coverage was bad. Is there the potential this year for the opposite to happen, for there to actually be better corner play, better secondary play that actually helps the defensive line get home, better defensive line play that actually creates more pass rush that actually makes the secondary better? And they didn't play in front of a crowd once last year. Like all those things combined, is there, I mean, how much upside is there, I guess, to this? Like what could this defense look like if things really click?
I mean, there's tons of upside. If they're older players, which I guess is mostly just kind of Bobby at this point, if he continues to play the way he's played the last couple of years, which has not been the best form of his, but still a very, very good player. And Brooks takes a step forward. DJ Reed is the guy that we saw in the second half of the year. Kello is able to, put it all together for a full year, and it, has, a consistent year and all that. Maybe Darrell Taylor, Alton Robinson, someone takes a step. Puna has more upside to him. Brian Monet has more upside to him. Jamal Adams can play better than he did last year. So like, if it all hits, there's a ton of potential here. It'll likely end somewhere in between. But there are a lot of wild cards here that you can kind of realistically expect to at least get a little bit better than where they were last year. And if where they were at the end of last year is any indication, right, they could actually be a pretty good defense.
We haven't really talked about Jordan Brooks.
Yeah.
He's maybe one of their more interesting defensive players in the whole roster.
How much what can he be for this defense? I mean, what are you picturing for Jordan Brooks? Like, we've seen KJ in the will position, and we kind of know it. Is he going to be different than KJ? Is he going to do things better than KJ, worse in some way? Like, what are you guys expecting from Jordan Brooks?
So he will not be as smart or as savvy as KJ. KJ is one of the best I've ever seen at instinctual stuff, sniffing out plays, reading defenses. I don't think to ask many players to do that. But I think as KJ got older, and not last year, he was never great at he wasn't an elite coverage player at times, and he was starting to slow down just sideline to sideline. And both of those things, I think, are areas where Brooks can really make a difference because Bobby doesn't have the speed he once has. I think Brooks is a very fast player, and I think he showed a lot of instincts in coverage, and apparently it's transitioned into camp so far, where he could be a very good coverage linebacker, which is basically the opposite of what he was deemed coming out of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, where is that going to show up, Dayna? I mean, is he going to be just a guy piling up tackles? Is he going to be is he going to be a guy that creates turnovers? I mean, do you have an expectation there?
I don't have a huge expectation, and I think that's because it's a little unknown how they'll use him still. And I want to say this about KJ really quick. KJ posted that video. I don't know if you guys saw it. Freaking broke my heart that he was just like, well, I don't understand why I'm not on a team. And I get it because I thought KJ had a really good year last year. I thought last year he looked really great. He is slower and Bobby is slower. And I think that that's where Brooks' speed will come in his youth. That's just a youth thing, right? But it just kind of depends on where they decide to focus him at. I don't think Bobby is quite the turnover machine that he used to be. So do they use Brooks in that capacity? Maybe that's where they need him. I'm still not convinced they don't bring KJ back, though. I'm still not convinced that won't happen at some point. I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying if they did, I wouldn't be like shocked by it in any way. It just kind of depends, I think, on how those first two preseason games, and we have to remember there's only 3 preseason games this year. So
but where would they play him? I mean, you'd basically.
No, I know. I know.
That's the thing. Like KJ,
you have to sit somebody.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
But you can't sign KJ to be a backup. Like
that can. That's the thing. Like I have a guess why KJ's not on a team. It's because he doesn't like the role of the contracts he's being offered, right? Like
I agree.
It's hard for me to believe that he has no offers out there. KJ could come back to Seattle tomorrow, I think, if he wanted, right? I'm sure there's a contract that Schneider and Carroll would be happy to slide across the table to him, right? It's just, what does he want?
I see.
And is it?
I think they've turned the page. I don't think that it is good roster management. Not that the Seahawks always have perfect roster management, but I don't think most GMs would necessarily want a veteran backup player. Like the backup roles should be younger players that you're developing and getting snaps, like other than at quarterback, or maybe like offensive line at a specific position. But like, you really I like cutting Ben Burke-Irvin or Cody Barton or, taking snaps from Darrell Taylor or cutting Aldon Smith. Like, I just can't.
But isn't that it? We don't know that Aldon Smith's going to play. Right?
We don't
know.
We don't.
Too much depth there.
Yeah.
But do we really think that this team wouldn't be better with, like, BBK? Really? Like, that's the thing that we can't give up on. I mean, the special team stuff is real. It's really that's very real. So that's a consideration. But like, you're really telling me that Schneider's like, KJ, we'd love to, but we got this Ben Burke-Irvin kid, and he's pretty small.
I know that sounds crazy.
He's kind of teeny, but
how many snaps did Ben Burke-Irvin play in last year? Like none on defense, and maybe like 5 or something. And he played a lot of special teams, and it's like the 6 wide receiver role. Like, do you really want Terrell Owens to be your 6 wide receiver and not play any snaps on offense and then not play any snaps in special teams? Like, you do need those guys. Like, backup linebackers have to be able to play special teams, period. Like, they have to. And KJ's not going to play special teams at this point in his career. So, I mean, whatever. I'm kind of beating a dead horse. If they sign him, I won't be upset. I think it'll be a head scratcher.
I think that's it, right? It's like no one's going to be mad no one will be surprised or mad if they bring him back but no one's going to die if they don't, right?
No. I think the Jordan Brooks thing is really interesting. I'm excited I'm excited about any player that we don't know what exactly to expect from. Like we know that he's got a baseline he established last year of being a very solid will linebacker. Like I don't think he was great, but he certainly wasn't bad. And now he's gotten bigger, faster, stronger, and more experienced. Reasonable expect that he's going to take a big jump. And I don't think we know what that's going to mean for this defense until we see it in action. So that's pretty cool. Nathan, were you going to say something? You look like you were thinking through something. Okay.
He's always thinking through something.
Yeah. So what are we thinking about the news about Mr. First pick of the draft this year? Mr. Eskridge. The news today was that for people that haven't been following, he started the camp on PUP, physically unable to perform, which means he has not practiced, which means that if they keep him on that list, he could start the season for the first 6 games not playing, similar to Colby Parkinson last year. The news today was they found something for his shoe that he was able to run and not feel any pain. And excuse me, I should have muted.
Bless you.
He was able to run without any pain, and now they just got to up his conditioning. So the general take from media was, okay, so Eskridge is on his way back. Is that your take, Jeff?
I think it's still wait and see just because of how finicky that injury is. But I'll say this. The other day, there was a lot of reaction to a tweet that just summarized Pete's comment on Eskridge. It seemed really gloomy and really hopeless. And when I read it, I said, okay, this guy might not play this year. This might be... I went back and watched the press conference, and I think everyone needs to do this. I know Evan does this a lot. We'll see something online, like Cody Barton's going to play a lot and freak out when he was just talking about that preseason.
Who are you talking about? Evan would never.
I mean, people do this a lot. They'll see like a Bob Condota tweet and the words are right. But like I went back and I listened to Pete talk about Eskridge the other day, and I had a completely different reaction than when I read the thing online. Pete was more saying that he's making progress and he actually ran pretty well. And then I saw Brady Henderson tweet out the same thing. So when I went back and I'm like, okay, maybe the situation is a little better than what that tweet looked like, because that tweet looked horrifying. That tweet looked like he was potentially going to miss the season. So I think there is progress being made, and the fact that he's been able to run the last 2 days, that's good news. Obviously, again, with toes and with feet, you don't want to rush it. You don't want to push it too much. You don't know, and you obviously should be worried. But I do think the situation's a little better than what it seemed like when that tweet first came in.
Nathan, I don't know, dude. I hear that you're wearing a special whatever in your shoe. And to me that it sounds like management of an injury. It does not seem like the injury is going away anytime soon. And so for me, a receiver who his game is built on speed, I'm still like, my expectations are super low for this kid, even if he does come back. I mean, where are you on this?
Almost the exact same spot, basically. I mean, I'm not a doctor at all. I have no information on what's going on with Eskridge other than he's got a hurdy foot. So, like, I'm definitely like complete, amateur here, just guessing. But
we all know, like, Dayna actually does. So you can talk to him. Dayna knows all the details. Medical professional.
All right, well, I'll sync up with Dayna later. But for now, my take is, I just don't like the idea that, like, well, we were able to like put a bunch of cotton into his shoe and now it doesn't hurt anymore or something. Like, is it
got Ronald McDonald?
Yeah, it's like let's imagine the shoe. He's got this one just massive felt shoe, like
yeah. Or so I don't, and then like, okay, great, it doesn't hurt when he runs, but if he's out there and somebody steps on it, or he's like, I mean, it's a contact sport. So like, for me, the idea of not having him this year sucks so much, right? That would be such a bummer. But like, this is also a guy that, you know, is a rookie, and you're hoping you have him around for several years, right? At least the next 3 after this one. So my take is worry less about putting a fancy shoe on him and making it so it doesn't hurt anymore, and, you know, actually just focus on getting the foot right and the long-term health of it.
Dayna, I'm going to keep banging this drum because look, around the league, I don't know if you guys are noticing, there are big name veterans that are starting to sign, like Justin Houston signs with the team and Gerald McCoy is taking visits. Doesn't mean these are the best players around, but like Melvin Ingram signed last week, right? Like some like quality veteran names. KJ Wright's still out there. We know Richard Sherman's still out there. You know, Golden Tate's still out there. To me, like the Seahawks need to sign a veteran at this point in camp. Like there's not another receiver that stepped forward and you're like, okay, this guy is taking over every day. He's showing up in camp as a great player. I don't think they can keep hedging here. I think they need to go get the best possible veteran receiver to come in. They can cut him if it doesn't work out, but like, I don't understand. I don't understand how they can be this comfortable with this receiver group.
So let me tell you a little story. The Bills podcast I was on this week, we were having conversations about the Seahawks and all of the NFC West. And he asked, you know, where people thought the Seattle might need to go pick someone up. I mentioned that a lot of people think that they needed to add a veteran wide receiver, and he laughed. The perception outside is Seattle's receiving core is golden. They have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. You don't need anybody else. He was baffled by that anyone would even be worried about that, because then you just need a third guy to come in every once in a while. And so I think sometimes Seahawks fans kind of get caught up in the what's the first disaster that's going to happen, because that often happens to us. So while I agree with you, I don't know that I agree about Golden Tate, and I know that you really want Golden Tate to come back. And I wouldn't hate that, but it wouldn't really be my first pick. But the perception outside of the fan bubble is that Seattle that is the least of their worries, is the wide receiver. But on that tune, it can't hurt, right? Like, are we seeing any other, because I have worked the last few days, and so I haven't been able to watch camp, but are there any other wide receivers that are standing out that would be good enough that you don't have to add to that grouping?
So this
or
is
would
hurt.
It be worth?
This is going to hurt.
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
But I think the team likes Freddie Swain and Penny Hart.
They do.
I think the team does. I think it's going to hurt. I agree with Brian. I would like to see them bring in upgrades, but I think they like those guys. I think they think Penny Hart can do what Eskridge can do in a pinch. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I agree, but that's my read on it.
Those people that are not close to Seahawks, I think I completely discount their perspectives. Like to say that Shane Waldron's offense does not need a third receiver.
It's also wild
for third receivers.
It's wild for a fan of a team with Stefan Diggs, John Brown, and Cole Beasley to be, who needs a third receiver? Like, well, your third receiver
it wasn't just him. It's other people that think that too. They see DK and Tyler, and they think that it's such a good group. And I think that's, kudos to DK and Tyler for that. I'm not saying that they don't need that wide receiver. I think it would be great. I think, having someone that can come down or come in during special plays or what have you. But I just don't see it as a team priority, because they see what others see, and they have the golden boy and, the monster in the end zone. So
and the thing that
I think Brian's right. Most fans don't understand the intricacies of other teams, that they don't know. Like Brian, that guy the other day who said the Arizona Cardinals have the best long-term setup of any team. Like that was one of the stupidest comments I've seen on Twitter.
So weird.
Stupid. Like I don't think teams understand other teams very well, or fans understand.
Lockett's a little deceptive, right? Because I think if he had just played, all out the last 2 years, I think it would be less of a concern for Seahawks fans. But the fact that he's really tailed off in the second half of the past 2 seasons.
Hurt both of the seasons, right? Like, didn't he miss time both years?
Yeah.
No, that's the thing, is he's never actually missed games, I don't think. But
except for when he broke his leg.
Sure.
He missed that one. And then I think he did miss some the next season too.
I thought I missed some two years ago. I thought I missed even a game last year, but maybe I'm wrong. I know 2 years ago he did. I could have sworn he missed like anyway, whatever. Like you're right, Nathan. I mean, if Tyler if he gets hurt or has to miss time, I mean, ooh. I'm going to tell you guys some of the other options out there. I'm shocked that this hasn't come up in chat elsewhere on Seahawks Twitter because this was the most popular name in all of Seahawks Twitter last year. And I think people just got exhausted.
Oh no!
Don't.
Josh Gordon.
Yeah.
Josh Gordon.
That's not who I thought you were going to say. Okay, good.
Who do you think I was going to say?
I don't know. Maybe Antonio.
Oh God, he's already gone. You don't have to worry about that. Thankfully.
Thank God.
But Josh Gordon, there was news that he was appealing to get reinstated again. You know, that's another name that could be out there. Other guys, Julian Edelman's retired, right? Danny Amendola, Dwayne Harris, Dez Bryant, Tavon Austin, who Evan has some infatuation.
You remember that one?
What's that?
You remember when Evan freaked out because Tavon Austin signed last year with someone?
I know.
He hasn't done anything in like 9 years.
DeAnthony Thomas. I mean, there's really the reason people think I'm obsessed with Golden Tate. Now I happen to like Golden for a bunch of reasons, but I also just think he's a hand and glove fit for what they need. And he's a sure bet. Anyway, so I'm going to keep banging that drum because to me it is an obvious pick. And when I sent out that they should sign Golden Tate, he was one of the first people to like the tweet. So I know he wants to come back. So if people in the chat are talking about Ursua, I mean, folks, he's collecting retirement paycheck already. The guy is like Pete Carroll's daddy. I don't know that we should expect anything from John Ursua. He's so old, but yeah, it would be
Maybe
great.
we can figure out a way to talk the Colts into trading for Geno Smith and we get a wide receiver from them.
Oh my God. Let's talk about that for a second. The Colts first opponent for the Seahawks, Carson Wentz surgery out for 5 to 12 weeks. And then Quentin Nelson, one of their great offensive linemen, similar situation. It's looking like there's a decent chance the Seahawks will face Jacob Eason in week 1. And that game is where?
There.
In Indy.
It's in Indy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do get a little kick out of the fact that when the schedules came out, Indy, all the Indy fans were like, well, we're going to start 1-0. They were just counting that as a victory. I was like, really?
Have you seen Carson Wentz play the Seahawks?
Really? I mean, how are you guys feeling about have any of you done any more research about how likely it is that Carson Wentz is going to miss that game?
So I did. I read a little bit more about it today. So apparently they're under the impression that he's going to fight back and be ready week 1. And I just don't see them doing that. I think that with those feet injuries, you like Nathan was talking about with Eskridge, you have to be so careful with them because they hurt him again, they're done. There's only so many times you can repair them. And so it'll be interesting to see how careful they are with him. Maybe they won't be so careful with their tackle that they got, but with Carson I bet it's at least a week or two into the regular season before we see him. So then the conversation turned to, would it be smart for them to go after and trade for a medium level Jimmy Garoppolo-esque quarterback, but then what if he comes in and kills it and then you have Carson Wentz sitting there? Or is it smarter to go get Blake Bortles and be done with it at that point? So I think after a couple of weeks of the rehab, I think they'll probably have, from what I was reading, they'll have a better idea of how quickly he'll come back. And if it's the full 12 weeks, guys, that's like Halloween. I mean, that's a ways out. And so they'll have to kind of rethink their season at that point.
And it's not just those guys. They signed their left tackle retired, Anthony Costanzo, and they signed Eric Fisher, who tore his Achilles in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
he's not ready.
I remember when the schedule came out, I circled this. That was a great time to play the Colts because they were going to be without their left tackle. Now they're without their left tackle and the best guard in football and their quarterback, most likely. I don't think they'll make it. I think it's very optimistic for them to get back in 5 weeks for that. Because Wentz's whole game, like, he needs to be mobile. If he can't move, he's pretty useless out there. Like, we know what kind of pocket presence he has. He needs that aspect to his game. And the Colts regime is in a really comfortable place where they don't need to like win necessarily this year. They're really comfortable there. I don't think they're going to rush guys back for week 1. They invested a ton in Carson Wentz, and they've had this quarterback issue since Andrew Luck retired. So I would be stunned if either Wentz or Nelson played week 1.
What do you guys think? I'm sure you're following a little bit the 49ers quarterback news. Nathan, have you been following like the media cover? The San Francisco beat reporter coverage has been pretty entertaining. Do you have a point of view on how that competition is evolving?
I mean, I've only heard bits and pieces, mostly that Lance looks pretty good and that Garoppolo looks like Garoppolo. So, I mean, just if I take off my Seahawks hat and pretend I don't see the Niners logo and stuff, I think, the funnest thing is obviously for Lance to play the whole year and get some run on it. But I don't know, rookie quarterbacks, it's always tough. So we'll see.
Dayna, anything that you're hearing or
well, other than Evan having a complete meltdown after one nice pass from Lance, he's like, "Oh my God, we're screwed!" Like he had an Evan meltdown, which no one would be surprised about. So here was the funniest quote I heard this week out of camp was the head coach. Everyone is like, "Oh, there's no quarterback competition. There isn't, Garoppolo is our starter. We're not having a camp competition," over and over and over again. And then one of their defensive players comes out or one of the wide receivers comes out and it was like, "Oh, I don't ever even know who's throwing to me. It's just the quarterback that's out there." Yeah, that's because that's a competition and they keep rotating them. So that's why you don't know. So I think that it's the writing is there. If Lance can manage to play even respectably in preseason, Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to see game day. He's just not. It would be illogical for them to have that. Now, will they want to keep him around because they have so much luck with injury? Maybe. I would assume so, but I don't know that Jimmy Garoppolo would be okay with that. So I think it's interesting that they keep insisting that this is not an issue when it is the only issue that they have. And it's the only thing, that was keeping them from having more successful season is their quarterback situation. And so I think to just kind of dismiss that is kind of silly on their part. It's just good PR.
Yeah, I do wonder with the 49ers. I just wonder if their defense is not like if there's a little bit of echoes from a few years ago. Nick Bosa was hurt last year. He's obviously great as a player, at least. And who is the guy from Kansas City that I'm forgetting, the edge rusher that also missed last year? D Ford. So those are two big players, but I think they've got
Fred Warner.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. But they lost Robert Saleh as their defensive coordinator. I think that there's some question marks on that defense, and that defensive line actually was not great last year. And Kerry Hyder was one of the best players on that defensive line last year, and he's left. If Ford and Bosa come back and they play all the games and they're solid, then I think they're in a decent spot. If they don't, I'm not sure that the 49ers defense is quite as great as I think folks are remembering it to be. So I don't know. I have some questions. I actually think one of the strengths of that 49ers team is the receiver group. It's kind of like a quietly tough receiver room. And we'll see how that plays out. What else? Jeff, did we talk about all the players that you heard inside scoops on that we should mention here?
Well, the other ones are pretty obvious. Like I heard Damian Lewis is a guy that just like has taken the second-year jump. But we need to see it in games. Offensive line is the hardest thing to evaluate They had the pads on, I think, one day, and he had one-on-one day. So I'm very eager to see how he does from a purely pass protection standpoint this year, because he was like a top 10 run blocker in the NFL last year, but a very bad pass protector statistically. So that's a really interesting area, because if you can have him and Gabe Jackson, who's apparently looked the part as well, that would be a real strength for them up front. But everything we've covered pretty much every position on the team. Receiver, Gerald Everett, we talked about a lot last week. I think he's really flashed in camp. But no, I think most of the names you'd be familiar with. And DJ was the one that threw me out. I didn't think he was going to be a potential starter. And it sounds like we kind of know who the corners are going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did like it was Seahawks.com. They did the 5 takeaways or 6 takeaways that they do every day. And the one of them today was don't sleep on Trey Flowers. And I found that interesting because of all the praise that the other guys were getting from that position group. And then they popped him in there too. And it's like, does that mean that we're going to have some depth? And is there going to be is that not a position we need to worry about? That was really intriguing to me today. But then I remembered it was Seahawks.com. And so they could to say things like that. But I've heard good things. I think that's exciting.
That won't surprise me. I mean, I said that last week's show. I think Trey Flowers stepped up considerably in the second half of last season. And he to me is depth. I don't think I'd rather him not be the starter, but he's a guy that I'd feel comfortable coming off the bench and getting snaps if need be. So last question. So this weekend is the mock game. I don't know if they're going to televise it or not. I don't think they will. And then a week later is the first preseason game. Like, we're just about a week away. Who is the player that you're most eager to watch in the first preseason game? And Nathan, I'm going to start with you.
DK. I think I'm always just most excited to watch DK. So no matter what game, no matter what Seahawks game you asked us for, I think my answer is just going to be DK.
I think that's a pretty good answer. Dayna, how about you?
Well, have we heard anything about the rookie Stone Forsythe? Have we heard how he's been doing? I'd like to. I'm sorry, what, Jeff?
Well, he's been the left tackle in camp because Dwayne hasn't practiced yet.
Oh, okay. I just hadn't seen his name come up too often. I'm interested. There were a lot of people really excited about him coming to Seattle. So I'm interested to see if he can live up to that hype a little bit.
Jeff?
Darrell Taylor. I've never seen him play before. So I don't want to form an opinion on what he looks like. I've seen college film, but I've never seen him play an NFL game. So curious to see what kind of player he is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about the cornerbacks. I think that's the key area where the Seahawks need to get a little fortunate for them to have like true contention aspirations. Like, it's one thing if they have decent corners, but for them to be like contenders, they need to have above average cornerback play. And I think there's a potential that they could, but it's huge question marks from the very top of that part of the roster all the way to the bottom. I don't think we know what we have there. So I'm really curious. It's hard to really assess corners when they're going against backup quarterbacks and whatever.
And it's the Raiders.
Right.
No, you know what though? The reports out of training camp today is that there was an argument between the beat reporters. One of them said Brian Edwards looks like Terrell Owens, and the other one said, no, he looks like Randy Moss to me. So the corners are going to get a hell of a test in that first preseason game.
Oh my God.
That? Are we playing the Raiders game one?
Yep.
I think so.
Yep.
Oh, I do have to ask one more question. I'm sorry, guys. Colby Parkinson has had a strong week. Had a few touchdowns, a lot of talk. Any of you think that people are saying like they don't know where he's going to get reps. Seahawks have generally always found reps for a third tight end. So, my main question is, what are you expecting from Colby Parkinson this year? Jeff, why don't we start with you?
think he's a really intriguing player, but I think he's going to be more situational. I think with his height and his size and his catch radius, I think he's a great guy to incorporate in red zone stuff. Within the 20s, I think he'll be a situational player. He didn't really play often last year. And it's hard to know. I think Nathan said this the other day, but like, it's hard to know what to expect from Will Dissly anymore. So I think some people still get excited about him, but I don't know what he can do. Like, I know Russell's worked out with him a lot. They're a really reliable player, but if he can't run anymore, then there's going to be an opportunity for Parkinson to be the number 2 tight end. So I think it will start off situational, but I think it's a great thing to have in your back pocket. A lot better than Jacob Holster.
Dayna, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. He seems to be a little more dynamic than Hollister for sure. And I agree with Will Dissly. To be honest with you, I was a little surprised he was still around. But then you hear all these people constantly talking about, oh, Will Dissly, he's so great. Well, first of all, he pissed me off about the whole soccer thing, but we all know about that. And so, but other than that, I don't really understand the hype around him. But like you said, he was at Russ's little camp that he had, and he kept getting rave reviews from that. So we'll see. But so I think that it's just going to depend. If Dissly goes down with an injury again, I think Parkinson will have a great moment to shine at that point. But I think for now, he'll just be more of a situational type player.
Yeah, I mean, Nathan, last year, Jacob Hollister got plenty of snaps. You had Greg Olsen and you had Will Dissly. 3 tight ends. I mean, they found snaps for all of them. I'm assuming Parkinson is going to be the 3rd tight end and get the fewest of those 3. Is that your expectation?
I don't have any expectation right now because like Jess said, I was talking about this on Twitter the other day and it made some people really mad, but like Dissly, I think, was back for the entire year last year, right? And like there's still a chance he's healing and he can get stuff back, but like he wasn't a very good player last year. But the flip side of that is that Parkinson's a complete unknown. So like yes, I think that there will be and then the other thing is Waldron's new here, right? This isn't the same offense that Shoddy ran last year. So I don't know who the Rams' 3rd tight end was last year and how many targets he was getting. So I really don't know what to think, but I don't think it's at all out of the question that if Parkinson's playing as well as the reports are, that he doesn't leapfrog Dissly. There should be no reason that Dissly is like locked in as tight end 2.
Yeah, that's fair. You won't like the reason, but I don't think that's a possibility because of the blocking. Dissly's, one of the stronger blockers of the group. That's and Parkinson. Fair. One of the things that Pete's even mentioned is, Parkinson had put on some weight, which they needed to strengthen up, and he's been working on his blocking, but it sounded still like it was a work in progress. Jacob Hollister was not a great blocker, but they found ways for him to play. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the main thing that would be holding them back. I think I'm higher on Dissly than maybe some of you guys are. I do feel like last year was like an injury recovery year, and I'm hopeful that he is back to his former self after that. But we'll see. So it's good. I mean, they've got depth there for sure. So. Folks, last week we mentioned that we were able to donate $40,000 to charity because of all of you and your contributions and being part of the Hawk Blogger and Real Hawk Talk community. Now's a great time to be part of this year. Patreon.com/HawkBlogger. We talked about the Ring of Honor. There's still spots available for that where we're going to get together with folks in person with the Real Hawk Talk crew. Dana's even thinking about flying out. Evan had come out. So somebody joined Ring of Honor last week. They prefer to remain anonymous, but it was great to see. And that's going to help a family who's got a child with autism. So that's just fantastic. So if you haven't already, join up at patreon.com/HawkBlogger. You'll get instant access to our Slack community, which is constantly buzzing with good info. Please join. If you haven't already, click the like button, click subscribe, click the little bell to get notified when we go live. who knows? Maybe the Seahawks are going to trade for Jadeveon Clowney. Again, it could happen, and we'd have to go live to talk about it. Dayna would be the first person there to do it. But until then, it's been great seeing you all this week, and looking forward to seeing you all next week. Wednesdays, every Wednesday, 8:00. The drum beat has started. Real Hawk Talk's back, and happy to see all of you. Have a great rest of your evening. Go Hawks.